And we're live. Welcome everybody here to the Basketball Passport podcast. I am Anthony Irwin. I am joined, as I always will be, by Leigh Ellis. This is our first episode here of a project that we could not possibly be more excited about. We are going to today introduce you to the concept. We are going to talk about the Karl-Anthony Towns trade. We're going to talk about the Raptors finally doing what they should have done forever ago in retiring Vince Carter's jersey. We'll talk about Zach Lowe being out at ESPN and kind of what it meant for the industry and what it meant to us in particular. And then we'll answer your guys' questions. A quick reminder, or not a reminder, seeing this is the first time we've ever done this on this platform. Please hit that subscribe button. Please hit that like button. Tell your friends. You know, we're trying out this brand new thing. Tell your enemies that you know I'm not really sure about these guys. But Leigh, how you holding up, man? Are you ready? Are any cold feet? Like, are you sure about this?
I'm very sure. No cold feet. We did have a 4-day weekend though with our boys because Hurricane Helene came through Georgia and a lot of rain. Fortunately, the wind wasn't too bad, but it's been quite a build up because I was getting ready for it last week. And then all of a sudden, as you know, as a father yourself, when you have an extra couple of days to play with the kids, it sort of throws things out a little bit. But fortunately, everyone's safe and well, and excited to get going here, man. It's great to be back in the game.
One, I hope you and I'm happy to hear that you and everybody down there are safe. To anybody who is going through it there, you know, really pulling for you guys, and hope that everybody gets the support necessary down there in the South where. Yeah, like I've seen entire freeways washed out in Tennessee. It's just crazy. Absolutely nuts.
I mean, some neighbors very close to us, they were underwater, you know, so this was as close as it's gotten to, you know, for us. We often at this time of year, we get the tail end of one that goes through Florida, but this one, the eye went over Atlanta. So, yeah, it was a, you know, pretty scary couple of days there, but yeah, fortunately, most of the water and the wind has subsided for now anyway.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and you know, try to introduce or try to explain what we're trying to accomplish with this show. I'll speak a little bit about the NBA aspect of it. I'll let you, Leigh, talk a little bit about the global aspect of it. We did this previously on the Lounge. I'm actually streaming this to the Lounge's page as well, the Lakers Lounge's podcast as well.
Great. I've got my Lakers pennant in the background for that reason there. You can see, and that's from the 1987 World Champion season. First pennant I ever got.
That was I was actually the very first pennant I could have ever gotten because I was born the year prior.
Right.
Like I was born in October of 86. They won in June of 87.
They did.
So we're going to, like I said, I'm going to drop this episode onto the Lakers Lounge feed. So if you guys are listening to this and you guys are kind of surprised to see a basketball passport thing, I'm the reason. I'm responsible for that. So that's what's going on there. And I'm just going to really quickly just kind of say, you know, I've been thinking about, you know, getting into NBA conversations, kind of league-wide topics and stuff like that. I always generally do with the Lounge anyway, but you know, you were on a show, you were on a Lounge, and you kind of said, what if we just, you know, what if we launch a podcast back at the time? More specifically about your, you know, the basketball passport and the global aspect of it. And I was like, yeah, but it'd be kind of a waste of your and my understanding of the sport and the league and all that to not talk about the NBA as well. So we're basically going to, on Mondays from here on out, while football is being played, we're taking on, we are doing something, Leigh, that the NBA doesn't even do. We're taking on the NFL. Bring it on.
Is the Manning cast is on Sunday nights, isn't it?
They're Monday nights. So,
Monday night. Okay, right.
Yeah. So they're Mondays. We're like tonight's Sunday night football. Actually, my fantasy team is very interested in how Josh Allen plays. But yeah, we're on Monday nights while football is going on. Leigh and I are going to take a look back at the previous week, look ahead to the week that is yet to come, and just have our fun with the NBA. We had giant news this last week. Karl-Anthony Towns is going to be a New York Knick. They're still working on the trade and the minutia of it, but we'll talk about that in a second. And then, once we kind of get through the news and the big items and stuff, we're gonna have our own fun with the league too, because that's the point. is in watching sports, covering sports, it should be the point. And then Thursdays, Lee, this is what makes this podcast, I think, truly unique.
Yes, no, absolutely. I'm really looking forward to Thursdays to be able to dip in a little bit more into the game worldwide. It's not just going to be a focus on the NBA, of course, these whole things, but also EuroLeague, the South American basketball, Australia, Asia, everywhere, and really, try to have a lot of people around the world contribute and be a part of it, because anyone who has been following me for the last 2 years has seen me traveling around the world, playing pickup basketball, exploring cities and countries and places I've never been to before. And it's been really, really fulfilling. And the best part of that is the support I've received by people in these new places that I've never been to before. And it's kind of grown, legs of its own, where, people send me, I just got a DM today on Instagram where someone was playing in Medellin in Colombia, and they were saying, come on out and play there, and that was great. And I've got a couple of games lined up. Not until later in the year. I'm going to be in Argentina. I'm going to be playing in Buenos Aires there at one of the coolest courts that I have seen, and I'll also be playing in Lima as well. So anyone out there who is in Buenos Aires, is going to be over Christmas, is going to be there, wants to come out, come along and play. We're going to have hopefully a really, really cool event. I've been talking to some people down there to try to tee that one up. And that's how it's going to go as well. Like, I want people to, make suggestions, create ideas of like, hey, you should go and play here, you should go and play there. And we'll try to, make it all happen and incorporate everybody around the world who's a basketball fan and wants to show off their city and their country. And, again, it's the connection of basketball that does that. So I've had a great time these last 2 years, and now I'm really looking forward to continuing to expand on the brand of Basketball Passport, because it started off me being on a challenge to try to play pickup basketball around the world. And now it's kind of morphed into this, like, basketball content anywhere in the world. And it's really, really exciting.
With the league becoming more global, not just in the sense of like the efforts that the NBA is making to expand all over the world, but I think importantly in terms of the sport itself, the league itself now being, to a certain extent, really kind of, I wouldn't go so far as to say dominated, but what used to be kind of this niche corner of the league, the international player was, there was a couple who was kind of fun to watch them play, let's see how it goes with them. Now we're at a point where MVP finalists, the vast majority of them in the last few years have been internationally born. And I think, getting to tell their stories and their relationship to the league is, I think something that they get really excited about. And that's part of this, is it's like really, with your relationship to the league and then how they feel about the sport in that way is something that I think we'll be able to do better than just about anybody.
Well, and I've already spoken to a couple of, huge names in Giannis, Luka Doncic, and Nikola Jokic last season about either the court that they first played on when they were kids, or for Nikola Jokic, just what basketball was like, because they had this incredible preseason game in Belgrade last year at Taj Maidan Park that was outdoors, only 7,000 people, but it felt like there was probably 100,000 people there because there was flares going. And this was only a preseason game, which was crazy about it. And a little bit later in the show, I'm going to talk about the event in Athens just last weekend to kick off the EuroLeague's 25th season, where they had another outdoor event at the original Olympic Stadium, originally constructed 300 years before Christ, and hosted their first Olympics there in 1896. And they had just a superb day, 2 games, 4 teams, and they played there basically in the twilight from the early afternoon or the late afternoon and into the night. 42,000 people were turned up for that. And this is a preseason game that meant, technically nothing, but the visuals that came out of that, the videos, the photos, the atmosphere from the people who were there. I'm hoping actually on Thursday we'll have someone on the show who was there. Haven't been able to confirm that at the moment, but I'm working on trying to get someone who was there so they can tell us what it was all about, because it looked so cool. And that's one of those things that European basketball, I think, is really going to start to run with, because it's 2 years in a row now. They've done it. I know in Belgrade they were going to do an event too at Kalemegdan Park. They had that teed up, but unfortunately the weather played a part and they had to move it indoors at the last minute. So those are the sorts of things and those sorts of experiences that I'm hoping to bring to your audience and build a new one of our own, just showing how basketball is so loved by so many people around the world, and other places are doing an incredible job of making the experience so cool for fans, and that's really, really exciting.
I wish the NBA would do more outdoor stuff.
I tell you, man, if next time I'm at an NBA press conference, if Adam Silver's there, it's All-Star weekend, or he does one usually at the start of the season, but I won't be there wherever that is. I'm going to actually ask him about that. I'm going to say, because it can't be, the facilities are fine. The facilities are top quality. It's nothing to do with travel anymore, because the NBA, we know, is going to Abu Dhabi, I believe, this week for 2 preseason games between the Nuggets and the Boston Celtics. So it's quicker and shorter to go to Greece or to Belgrade or Turkey or somewhere like that. And again, they're flying charter. It's not like they have to fly connections. They're not flying Ryanair out there to London or to Ireland or somewhere and having to then connect. They're going, in their own jet. So this event, as I say, last week, especially in Athens, would have been perfect if an NBA team had joined that, because it's just. It was so cool, and there's no more risk there playing than there would be playing any other preseason game anywhere else that they play or anything like that. I mean, injuries can happen at any point, but their facilities are top quality. Everything is geared towards making sure that it's a safe environment for the players to play in. And then on top of that, 42,000 people paying to get in. So it's not like it's going to cost anybody any money. So, really, really exciting. And I agree. I would think the NBA should at least consider this as an option going forward.
Absolutely. All right, let's go ahead and actually get to the content and actually start to talk about basketball, where in the NBA we had a shocking trade in the sense that, like, the timing of it, finding out Cat goes to somewhere else, and Minnesota has been considering trading Cat now for a little while because of how much he's going to be paid and stuff. I know I'm a Vikings fan. When it comes to the NFL, so I have like a weird number of Wolves fan friends, that way. And I haven't spoken to a Wolves fan friend who was like excited about this trade. I can't wrap my head around it. Leigh, I'm gonna pass it off to you to try to like explain what they're thinking here. The news obviously being that Karl-Anthony Towns would be going to New York. Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo will be going to Minnesota. They might be involving a third team. I believe Charlotte is the team rumored to help facilitate this thing. And they're hoping to get it done, according to reports, early this week, so that everybody can kind of dive into camp and stuff. But from where you're sitting, Leigh, how'd you take this one in?
Oh, shocking. Absolutely shocking. I mean, the Minnesota Timberwolves, for most of their existence, have been pretty bad. I know the KG Wolves made it to the Western Conference Finals 20 years ago, but since then they've been perennially in rebuild mode. Last season, they get knocked out by the Nuggets in the first round in 5 games, or 2 seasons ago. Last season, they, of course, lose to the Mavericks, but it felt like they were finally making progress there. And not only that, I thought with Karl-Anthony Towns, who has been there for 9 seasons, he actually was okay kind of ceding the team to Anthony Edwards from what we'd seen in Edwards last season. So it wasn't like this was a KG and Stephon Marbury battle back in the day where it was like, it's my team. No, it's my team. It was almost like the franchise guy was like, I'm happy playing second fiddle here, to Anthony Edwards. And now they go out and make a deal for a guy who I just don't really think fits into that roster and to that setup with them. I think Julius Randle has been a good player. I know he's been an all-star, an all-NBA player, but it feels like he's not the sort of guy who's going to come along and instantly concede that Anthony Edwards is the future of this franchise. Randall's playing for a contract too, coming after this season. So, this is probably going to be the last big chance he gets to sign a big deal. So he's going to want to go out there and get his own. And so, initially I was like, why on earth did they do this? And then Brian Windhorst, who is still at ESPN, actually had a fantastic article up talking about the various reasons behind it. And for one of them, for the New York Knicks, Mitchell Robinson, their center, is out for the first 3 months of the season. I think he's a very good player, but you just don't know what you're going to get out of him. Yep. His durability is a huge question. And of course, they lost Hartenstein to the Thunder in the offseason. So they had a big gap in the middle. And look, Towns is not a banger like that. He's more a finesse big man who'll spread the floor. But they needed someone to fill that gap. And so, the Wolves, and as Windhorst points out in his article, the Wolves are going up against this now, the penalty fees for going over the salary cap. But the one question I have about that is, after one more season, the salary cap is going to explode again when the new TV deal kicks in. So you would think at that point the Wolves wouldn't be paying as much in those penalties. But it feels like Glenn Taylor, the owner there, has lost patience, and he doesn't want to pay out money or whatever, and he's made this deal believing that Anthony Edwards is on the rise, and it doesn't matter who's beside him to make this work. But I think this is a huge step backwards for Minnesota. I think after what we saw from them last season, they're going to not be as intimidating, because I don't see Randall and Gobert fitting all that well together. I don't know how that's going to sort of slot in there, especially like that.
Offensively.
Exactly. And then you've got Mike Conley, who everyone loves and respects Mike Conley, but he's 37 years old. Mm-hmm. Like you need someone a bit younger, someone who's not the same sort of timeline as Anthony Edwards. And so if you're a Wolves fan, you've got to feel right now like just a bitter taste in your mouth. You've given up a still youngish player in Towns entering his prime, who, again, for everything I've read about him, John Krasinski had a great article as well saying, this guy's done everything for the community. He's been a great teammate. He's been great in the locker room. He's gone through a lot of losses too, Karl-Anthony Towns, but never, demanded a trade or asked to be moved or anything like that. And he gets dealt on the eve of the season. So I think this is a great move for the Knicks. I think they get off Randall, they get Towns, they fill somewhat a replacement of what they were looking for. They lose DiVincenzo, who had some incredible moments there last season, but you're prepared to give him up in order to get Towns. But if you're the Wolves, you're like, oh my God, this feels like a huge step backwards.
Yeah, it's so easy for me, and I'm kind of naturally inclined to go to show my annoyance on a deal like this, because Minnesota just probably had their most exciting season since KG, right? And
probably honestly more than that too.
I think so. They felt like they had a legitimate shot at a championship this year, and to go from that. And all right, so you're concerned about the luxury taxes and stuff like that, and you're concerned about the apron that you might fall into with the roster as you have to start paying guys out. Then address it then. Like you can always move a contract. You'll never reach a point where Karl-Anthony Towns is immovable. Those kinds of. So go through the season, give this core an opportunity to try to build on last year's success, and give this fan base a reason to believe in you again. Because like you mentioned Glenn Taylor, and you mentioned the ownership situation there in Minnesota. Remember, they were about to sell. Like Glenn Taylor was about to sell. And like fans were hopeful, were thinking that maybe, just maybe, they wouldn't have to deal with Glenn Taylor's nonsense again. And then the sale falls through. Glenn Taylor realizes how much money he stood to make, because Anthony Edwards is a legitimate, he looks like he's going to be face of the league,
that's right.
And so Glenn Taylor's like, actually, no, I'm not selling. And then to go from the excitement there of maybe, just maybe, we will have a more serious owner, to not only know we're not going to, and so quickly be reminded how awful an NBA owner Glenn Taylor is. My heart breaks for these Wolves fans, because the thing about Minnesota, they don't have, since for the last 30 years or something like that, they don't have a professional championship in a state. It's like for some reason the sports gods all decided to just dump on the state of Minnesota and the city of Minneapolis. And you know, I'm a Vikings fan, and right now the Vikings just beat the Packers today. They're 4-0. And I'm just like really I'm sitting back. I'm like, don't move. Don't move.
Yeah.
And don't do anything that might piss off the sports gods again, because I have never experienced like full on, you know, unfettered joy as a Vikings fan in my lifetime. Because they've never even been to the Super Bowl in my lifetime. So
really,
like it's
wow.
this state, it's this city, it's this community that has just been beaten down time and time again by sports. And like this being the latest example on as they're getting ready for this really, really exciting season. I just it's the exact kind of trade that just drives me absolutely bonkers when an owner steps in and completely cuts the legs out from under an otherwise thoroughly enjoyable the prospects. They were so much fun to watch last year. And Anthony Edwards looks like he's about to, you know, vault into this iconoclast, you know, kind of spectrum in the NBA. And I feel like this might hold him back, because now he's going to have Rudy Gobert, you know, taking up space. You're going to have Julius Randle, who isn't as good a shooter as Karl-Anthony Towns, unable to generate more spacing alongside Rudy Gobert. And I'm really concerned what this does. And the timing of it too is just mind boggling. That's the part of this that just really doesn't make any sense.
And that's where you just feel for Cat, you know, like getting ready for another season, you know, coming off that big season. And it seemed like all the pieces were in the right place. And now all of a sudden, and the thing is, when you get traded to the Knicks, if you don't really want to be a Knick and you don't really want that sort of environment to play in there under the, you know, intense scrutiny of the fans and the media, you know, that's the sort of place that can really, you know, derail your career to some extent. And I don't think Karl-Anthony Towns, I respect him immensely. I think he's a fantastic player, but I don't think he's a Knick in that sense. I don't think he's the sort of guy who's, you know that if he gets off to a slow start, and there's every chance the first 20, 30 games of the season is going to be such a, you know, getting to know you period, that the fans are going to get on him immediately, you know, because the Knicks have championship aspirations this season. There's no question the moves they've made, bringing in Bridges, you know, earlier in the year, giving up a lot of draft picks. What happened to them last year? I mean, they kind of ran out of legs. Another sort of Tom Thibodeau team that seems to just have a few too many minutes in their legs come playoff time. But still, the Knicks are going into this season with every belief and hope that they are as good as the Boston Celtics, who I think are, you know, deserve to go in as the favorite in the East. And you know, they've improved by getting Towns, but I just feel that it's such a different environment than what he's used to there in Minnesota, because he's just got the temperament of a guy who doesn't really, you know, he doesn't really seem to want to have all that focus and all that attention on him. So it's going to be a tough season. And of course, he is reuniting with Tibbs. He played under him in Minnesota, and that relationship was, you know, probably not the best that's ever been there between a player and a franchise player and a coach. So there's going to be, you know, at least they know each other, but how will that chemistry go between Thibs and Karl-Anthony Towns? So, you know, it's great when you're launching a podcast. It's fantastic content, but you know, I honestly felt sorry for Kat. And then again, as I say, when you go through Windy's article there, you really see that it was driven largely more so by the financial aspect of it, which just sucks the life out of, you know, the goodwill that's coming from Minnesota last season. And you and I talked the other day when we had a show. You know, if you look at the last recent champions, you know, the Denver Nuggets is a good example with Jokic, Michael Porter, Jamal Murray, guys that they drafted, you know, went through a few years of turmoil and then they finally made it through. The Golden State Warriors of the last 10 years with Steph and Clay and Draymond, guys have drafted and grown together and really gone on to have that success. And of course, the Boston Celtics, the reigning champions right now with Jalen and Jason Tatum, and until last season, Marcus Smart was there as well, really showing that continuity takes time, but it comes through the draft. And the Wolves, you know, really seem to have that in the sense that they drafted Towns. I know it was a long time ago, it was 9 years ago now, but they drafted Edwards. and it was starting to pay off. And now you sort of look at that situation, you just look at that roster, it just looks clunky offensively. That's what it looks like to me. Like, I know that,
yeah,
they'll be going in and saying, like, this is Anthony Edwards' team, let him cook, but he's going to face huge defensive challenges this season because every team is going to be scouting him and really trying to put a lot of pressure on him, and he's going to face challenges that he hasn't faced up to this point of his career so far.
I think I have a bit of not controversial, a hot take here though on the Cat front. I actually think Cat will handle this okay. Cat has suffered like some of the greatest losses that you can suffer over the last few years, right? Like he's gone through like legitimate adversity on the other side of COVID, lost his mom to COVID, and got really sick himself with it as well. And I think that kind of like his run in the playoffs last year was actually really interesting because I thought like he really took a step forward in terms of his physical toughness and stuff like that. And I actually thought that this trade might be one of those FU moments for Cat where you get this I actually saw this with Shaq when he got traded from the Lakers to Miami. And part of the reason he got traded was because he refused to get into shape. And then the next offseason after they traded him, you see him show up and he looks chiseled. And I was so angry. Like I was so like, it was like, Shaq, if you could have just done that, you'd still be in LA. But yeah. I kind of wonder with Cat if he takes this as an opportunity to say F you to Glenn Taylor and F you to Tim Connolly. And he and Tibbs, who all like Tibbs, probably not the biggest fan of Glenn Taylor either. If those two guys kind of find a common denominator here that they can kind of rebuild their relationship on or off of and move forward that way. I'm with you. I think there are there's reasons for concern there, but I actually think that like if I was a Knicks fan, I'd be pretty excited about getting Cat with this opportunity. A super talented guy who now has reason to say bleep you to, the entirety of the organization that just salary dumped them. It's not like they got decent value. They salary dumped them.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing. I mean, Tim Connolly has been credited with building, obviously, the Denver Nuggets that became a championship team and then the Wolves team. So was this the best they could get for Cat, or was this like they actually targeted Randall and then they targeted?
No way.
I mean, that's the other point is like surely there was better value out there of someone potentially younger. And I can't think of anyone off the top of my head, but it just felt like this is the sort of thing where a team would actually instead, if they had a bad season last year, say, well, we need to clear some cap space. Cat's going to eat up a lot of our contract, our cap going forward. And we're certainly not trading Anthony Edwards, but instead it was like the season was full of hope and optimism. Even though obviously they lose to the Mavericks in 5, but it was like they took a big step by beating the Nuggets in 7, the defending champs in Denver in Game 7. So, it felt like everything was moving in the right direction there for the Wolves. And listen, I hope you're right about Towns. I would love to see him have that sort of, that FU attitude to the Wolves and to, the owner there, because that's probably been the biggest criticism of Cat's career to this point, is that he's never really been that sort of tough guy, and then that's fine. Not everyone has to be, but he's kind of, it's easy to sort of pick on him and say, well, he's been a little bit soft, because I think he's shown that throughout his career. And it'd be great at this stage where he's like, well, man, now it's time for me to really show what they're missing out on. And, that'd be great to see, because I felt bad for him. I just thought it was bad. But again, if you're the Knicks, man, you're very, very happy with this, because Randall, of course, missed their playoff run last season, was injured, and I think his relationship was always hot or cold there with the Knicks. I mean,
hot the regular season, and then the postseason started.
Exactly, and that's the thing with Cat, is you have to be mentally prepared for the Knicks fans to be, your biggest supporter. Remember Evan Fournier in his first game. What was that, like 3 or 4 years ago now? And they loved Evan Fournier because he hit some big shots, and then by the end it was like they couldn't get rid of him quick enough. So
I don't know who liked the other less between Fournier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's very fickle, but when they're in your corner, And if you get Spike Lee in his corner, then that'll be great. But I don't know. We'll see how it plays out here.
All right, let's move on to, I think, a significantly more fun and I think better story. Now, it's been annoying to this point as it's taken so long to arrive here, but the Raptors are, Masai Ujiri, announced the other day, we're finally going to announce Vince Carter's jersey. Vince Carter put Toronto basketball on the map. Was the most exciting player of his era back when he was playing in Toronto. Now, obviously, you did have the falling out there. He left on ugly terms, demanded a trade, was kind of sandbagging at the end of his tenure before he went to New Jersey and eventually, helped get the New Jersey Nets to the finals, where they just routinely got their butts kicked by the Lakers. But you were actually, with your prior connections and the relationship that you had with used to be the Basketball Jones, and then it became the Starters, and then it became No Dunk Sink, before you pursued your passions elsewhere. Obviously, a very deep connection with Toronto basketball there on that show. Skeets, right, and Tass, and give me some Raptors news and all that good stuff. So I'm honestly going to get out of the way here, Leigh, and let you kind of explain to the audience what this means for all parties involved here.
It's huge, and it really is long overdue, because Vince Carter meant so much more than just what happened on the court there for Toronto, for the city, and for basketball in Canada. And you're right, it didn't end on good terms. Vince was unhappy, and he did sort of mail it in there towards the end and got traded, and then came back and had a couple of game winners for the Nets against the Raptors, which was just incredible. One of those big 3-pointers he had, which was from a mile out. But Vince, for my own journey, I was a big basketball fan, of course, in the 90s, and then Michael Jordan retired the second time and the league went on strike. And, the NBA kind of was like, oh, what's happening now? They had that 50-game season. And I was actually living in England, and then I moved to Toronto, and I'd heard about Vince Carter, people saying, oh, this guy's the next Michael Jordan. But prior to that, of course, we'd heard Harold Miner was the next Michael Jordan as well. So a lot of guys had that label placed upon them. And so when I came to Toronto, I was like, well, I've heard about Vince Carter. Let me see him in action. And the first NBA game I ever went to was late in April, and Vince Carter against the Pistons had a bad game shooting the ball, but he hit the game winner in overtime. And so I was like, all right, okay, all right. So yeah. I'd sort of fallen out of love with the NBA there for about 18 months. And then my first game I go to, this guy people have been telling me he's the next Michael Jordan, goes out and hits a game winner. I'm like, all right, now I'm paying attention again. And of course, that was also the season they made the playoffs. They upset the Knicks. They're winning Game 5 in Madison Square Garden. And then they have that incredible 7-game series against the Philadelphia 76ers, where Vince just misses that long 2 at the end, which would have given them an incredible victory in Game 7. And so, even then you could tell, like, he was something special. Vince was not just, another player there. He had incredible athleticism. He could shoot. He was just so much fun to watch. And you felt like the Raptors were really on the rise there. So it was sad that only a couple of years later it ended. But this is one of those things that I believe, having lived in Toronto for 9 years, and 2001, of course, was the last season the Vancouver Grizzlies had in the NBA. If it wasn't for Vince Carter, I think the Toronto Raptors weren't far behind actually going into extinction themselves, because, Vince made people want to go and play in Toronto, because before that, Damon Stoudemire, he took off as quick as he could. Tracy McGrady fled as well down to Orlando, and it was like no one wanted to go and play there. And all of a sudden, Vince made it cool. And so the impact that he had and that still carries on today deserves recognition. The Raptors... Yeah. The Raptors, again, whatever happened, and things happen. You talked about Shaq just then as well, leaving the Lakers on bad terms. Well, he's got a statue out the front of Staples Center there, number retired and all that sort of thing. So, it's okay that things don't always work out in one way, but you don't ignore everything that happened, or you don't forget everything that happened. And Vince Carter was a huge, huge player in Raptors history and deserves this honor. And I'm so glad it's taken longer than it should have. And plenty of guys have worn number 15 since Vince did. But now he's got that ultimate recognition, and I think it's great for Masai Ujiri to be the one who, really unveiled that announcement there on the weekend in Toronto. Vince was great, and Vince is also, he's been humble about his culpability in what happened there in Toronto. He didn't like the way it ended either.
Great point.
And that's what's really important. I mean, we've all been through situations in life where you're like, hey, maybe it didn't go the way I wanted it to do, but that doesn't mean the whole experience sucked. And I think that's very, very important. And for the Raptors, they deserve to retire Vince's number. I think they'll probably retire Kyle Lowry's at some point as well. Kyle's had a huge impact on the Raptors. He won a championship there. But Vince's impact can never, ever, I think, be replicated because he put that country on the map and kept them on the map. And now he's getting that honor.
Yeah, I saw that, there was quite a bit of debate, as there tends to be, right? Everything has to be a debate. But I saw there was a bit of a debate in Toronto, should they wait for Kyle Lowry to get his number retired first and then Vince Carter? I don't know why DeMar DeRozan isn't a part of these conversations.
Well, I guess DeMar, again, very, very loyal player, loved the city, became an all-star there, very, very good player, but of course didn't win the championship. He was traded there for Kawhi Leonard. So I think DeMar maybe gets his jersey retired, but I just don't think he quite had the same impact as Kyle and Vince. Love DeMar, but I think there's got to be a little more behind the reasons to retire a guy's number.
But like, if Kyle Lowry's in the Kawhi trade, then DeMar gets the championship. Right.
Well,
Kawhi's the reason they get the championship.
Yeah, right? I know, but I mean, look, the other funny thing about Kyle Lowry is Masai Ujiri traded him to the Knicks. Remember?
Yeah.
He was traded. He was out the door. He thought he was going to play for the Knicks until James Dolan was like, hang on a minute. You hosed us with the Andrea Bargnani deal. And someone at some point got into Dolan's ear and said, he's probably going to, he's probably going to hose you down. I can't remember who was coming back from the Knicks. But
probably would have been a pretty good trade.
But yeah, so I don't think it's as simple as saying, well, if DeRozan's there instead of Lowry, they win the championship. I mean, Lowry was massive for the Raptors in the season and in the playoffs. He had some huge games, especially Game 6 in Golden State. I remember because the Raptors had a chance to close it out in Game 5 at home, and they blew it. And it was like, oh my God, are they gonna let this one go when KD was out? I think Clay was injured at that point. And then Kyle Lowry, I remember in Game 6, he got off to a really hot start, and it felt like he was like, we're winning this no matter what. So, but yeah, honestly though, if you'd said to me 10 years ago, what's more likely to happen? The Raptors are still in existence or they win a championship. Maybe let's go 15 years ago. I would have said the Raptors will not win a championship before they go extinct. They'll go out because, and that's that. Look, this is another thing that's credit to DeMar DeRozan. He also stayed there the whole time. He was drafted there. I think he was 9 seasons that he played there. So, he's a loyal guy and he was great for the franchise. But I remember in 2006 when I went back to Toronto the second time and, it was Lauren Woods and Mike James and those guys there. And it was just like, no one wants to be a part of the Raptors. They had Babcock as the GM, I think. They got rid of him and got Brian Colangelo in, and things changed. But there was just no way I could foresee them coming through to win a championship, especially the way they did. Remember, they lose to Orlando. First game of that series, they're down against the 76ers. They nearly go down 3-1 against the Sixers if Kawhi doesn't hit a big three, and then they're down 2-0 against the Bucks in the conference finals before coming back and winning in 6. And then, honestly, on top of all that, then you've got to face the Warriors who are going for 3 in a row. Now, Kevin Durant, obviously, he did play Game 5 there, but he didn't really play at all in that series. And so, that was tough on the Warriors. But so many different things had to fall into place for the Raptors to go on to win the championship. But, ultimately that's the way it goes for every team to some extent.
Yep, absolutely. I'm really happy for Vince. He was overcome with emotion, right? Had to walk away from the mic and then go back and dap up with Masai. Obviously, Vince, is very active in with Turner and does games and does NBA TV and stuff, and has, played for, I mean, if not for like LeBron's current run, it's funny.
Yeah.
LeBron's current run makes Vince Carter's, like the end of Vince Carter's career, look a certain way. But really, it was pretty astonishing that Vince Carter, who was like this high flyer, would last as long as he did. Really helped that he developed a really good jump shot and stuff. Happy for him. A lot of the, anybody that I've spoken to will say that Vince is this really good guy and very self-aware guy, and that this happened for the right person. So that's great to see.
Yeah, and I can actually speak to that too, because I've met him several times through Turner and at the finals of things, and I'm nobody to him, but he's always given me time. He's always chatted to me, and we've always spoken. He wouldn't know me if he walked past me on the street, but in the environment of when we worked for the same company, he would chat to you like we're chatting to each other right now, and that's what I love about Vince. And you're right about his career there. Like it seemed at the end where he was playing for the Kings and the Grizzlies and the Hawks, he was like, I'm not chasing a championship. I'm just playing because I love the game, and he's still. He was happy coming off the bench there in Atlanta. I saw him for his last 2 seasons here, and I saw him one day, and I said something to him about, you just love the game. I can't remember what the context was, and he's like, yeah. I said, what about those practices, though? Do you still get up for every practice? He's like, yeah, not those so much, but I just still like playing.
Yeah. He has, I think, one of the coolest quotes ever, now that I think about it, where he was asked, I think it was on Dan Le Batard's show, and Dan asked him, it's crazy to still see you, because I think there's a clip of him in year like 17 or something crazy, still putting it between his legs or still throwing a windmill down, and it still looked just as clean as Vince Carter could. And they asked him, it's like, how are you still doing that? And he says to them a quote that like really kind of explains how he and I are just different species. But he goes, yeah, when you jump like that, elevating isn't the hard part. It's coming down and landing from that high that really hurts. And I'm like, well, one, elevating is very difficult for me at 38 years old. And two, I don't think I've ever jumped so high that it would hurt when I was landing. I've jumped from high places. I've jumped down from walls and stuff when I was young and an idiot, but I've never jumped so high that when I landed, it was like, oh man, landing there hurt.
Well, at the finals in Oakland in 2019, there's a video going around of him dunking in like pants and a shirt, because me and him, he and I just actually filmed a feature. And after that, someone threw in the ball and said, "Can you still dunk?" And he goes up and throws down a reverse, and it's somewhere out there on social media. But it was the same thing. Like he just glided up there and threw down a dunk, and it was like, you're like, man, like this is him when he's at not anywhere near the peak of his athleticism either. This is like an old man getting up there and throwing down, but he still looked great.
Unbelievable. Congratulations to Vince Carter. All right, the final story here that we have for you guys before we get to questions. And by the way, if you guys want to hit us with questions, you can send them to here he is, basketballpassportpod@gmail.com. Nice short email for you guys to send your questions to.
We should maybe just make a BP pod.
We could, or it becomes a bit on the show.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. We promise to answer anyone's questions if they are prepared to put that into the.
You can remember how to spell our email. I will get your questions. Also, something that I do for Lakers Lounge that I'll go ahead and transfer over to this show as well. If you leave us a 5-star review on iTunes with a question there, I'll check those and we'll answer those on the air here as well. But yeah, final subject here before we get to some of those questions. Leigh, you also asked for questions on Twitter as well, so we'll grab some of those. But Zach Lowe, it was reported last week that Zach Lowe had been laid off by ESPN. This obviously on the heels of Adrian Wojnarowski retiring from ESPN to go and be the GM at St. Bonaventure. With their basketball program. Obviously, before even Woj and his departure, ESPN lost JJ Redick to the Lakers. Those are three brilliant basketball minds in their own way that ESPN is now going to be going into the next season without. But the low one, I think, hurt in a different way than the other two, right? In like his general approach to the sport and to covering it was, I think, incredibly admirable. Like, one of the things that I always look for in content that I enjoy and look forward to is a sense of curiosity, and I always got that sense from Zach and everything that you wrote, his podcasts and his conversations. He was great on TV. He was great on podcasts. He was great interviewing. He was a great writer. All of these things, and I don't know. It just kind of it really hurt in the sense that, like, if Zach can't stick at ESPN, and there's a variety of reasons that have been reported for what other things might be going on here. But if Zach can't make it and stick at ESPN, then who the hell does, doing things the way that he did?
They've just signed on ESPN for another 11 years, as the primary rights holder. So you would think, as a part of that you would want to have, the best quality writers and podcasters and people who can speak on the game articulately, intelligently. Zach is incredibly well connected. Zach writes, I believe, without any compromise whatsoever. It feels that he's one of the most genuine writers and podcasters out there, because we know that access to information sometimes comes at a price. People want will give you information as long as it's portrayed in a certain way. It never ever felt like that with Zach. It felt like he wrote what he had done his due diligence on, as far as gathering that information without being too worried about whether or not that was going to restrict his access. And so this is just huge, that, again, you would sign this new TV deal and you basically give away the most respected writer to to competition.
He's going to land somewhere.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm not worried about Zach. Sort of, oh my God, he's going to be out of a job. What's he going to do? He can pick wherever he wants to go, pretty much, or he could
Zach,
just start his own thing.
Job, please be nice about it.
So that to me, again, this sounds like they are clearing money for signing, someone to come along to fill Woj's shoes, and it's like, if you can't see the value that Zach brings beyond. He's not going to tweet things out 3 seconds before someone else does. Like, Zach is going to give you, like we just talked about with the trade, he's going to give you the in-depth impact of that trade, of what it means and what it looks like and how it happened and things like that. And that now is going to a competition. And I think that's just terrible for ESPN. I mean, we're not going to miss out on Zach. He'll be back. He might take some time here to recalibrate and, before he gets back into it. But it's just, I mean, you know what it's like in any sport. There's almost nothing that people can universally agree on. There's virtually no opinion out there that people have that everyone just goes, yeah, you're right. Zach Lowe, I think, is by far the best NBA person who covers the league.
It's hard to even describe him, right?
Exactly.
Is he a writer? Is he a podcaster? Yeah. Is he a TV guy? Is it like he's just Zach?
But he brings incredible insight to everything that he does. And Ethan Strauss had a good article the other day talking about, one of the things he believes caused this was that Zach isn't really helpful for gamblers, and that's, again, a huge thing these days, that people are more interested in the gambling and the parlays and all the bets and things like that. And that's not Zach's area. But of course, you don't read him for that. So you wonder if that was then part of ESPN's bottom line for what they're paying you for what the return is. But that just, again, makes no sense whatsoever when you should have the stable of the best writers. And I think ESPN has got some other really good writers. I think, Windy's great, Tim Bontemps, Kevin Pelton, to name a few, really good writers who cover the league. But Zach, for me, is the top of the pile. And so whoever scoops him up is going to put themselves in a great position to cover the league in a fantastic way. And there's always going to be some movement and for various outlets, whoever can land Zach is going to feel pretty good about themselves, and they should pay him, honestly, whatever he wants, because, again, it shouldn't always just be about the gambling or the other side of it. You want people to go to your site to read the most intelligent writers, and Zach is that person for the NBA.
Yeah, I think you made a really important point here, and it's something that I can't shake from my mind, because essentially ESPN's the price that they're paying for the NBA here moving forward. Look, I'm not nearly smart enough nor plugged in enough to say one way or the other whether it's good or bad money or whatever. But enough of the things that I've read from people who understand these things better have called this next TV deal a bit of a gamble. That with streaming and the issues that have risen from there, and with Amazon now being in this. Does Amazon just kind of absorb a lot of what Disney is trying to do in their NBA rights deal? We've seen what Amazon has been able to do with football. They put on their presentation of football games is tremendous, and we never know when Apple or Netflix are going to get involved. And also, we also have to acknowledge that ratings in the NBA have kind of dipped a little bit as everybody has come to realize 82 games is way too many in the regular season. So, you're having all of this go on. And with this being a bit of a gamble, there are people speculating that smart people speculating, Strauss among them, that this might be the cost of this TV deal, that Zach Lowe is an expensive employee and that ESPN is going to be looking to save in other places. And that this would be a line on their docket that they felt like they could live without. And if I was the NBA, I'd be pretty pissed because
absolutely,
clearly they felt a certain way about the way that Turner covered the NBA and the way that, inside the NBA spoke about the NBA. We could read pretty easily between the lines there as the NBA put poison pills in their own contract that would make it more difficult for Turner to match. The NBA is going to start caring a lot more about how their partners talk about the sport. And I can't imagine that they're going to be over the moon about, a consensus, the smartest guy writing, speaking, or doing TV about the NBA not being at one of the league's partners. That feels like something the league would probably be pretty tweaked by.
I 100% agree with that. That's the thing. I mean, ESPN is going to be paying the most, so they should have the stable of the best people to cover the sport. And he, by far, as I mentioned earlier, is in that class for what he does, whether that's writing or whether that's the podcasting or whether that's the 10 things I like and dislike, whatever it is. It just always felt that he brought a level of integrity and intelligence that can't be necessarily calculated by a monetary figure. But again, he was worth whatever they were paying him because he always brought some level of sophistication to what he did, and again, without feeling that he was doing anyone's PR or anything like that. So but he'll pop up again in no time. It's just a matter of which partner he decides to sign on with.
All right, we're going to answer some of your guys' questions here before we get out of here. A quick reminder, please do hit the subscribe button. If you guys are watching on YouTube right now, you're at the lounge, but head on over to youtube.com/basketball passport. Wow, easy for me to say. So what I'm going to do here, because we ran into some issues with StreamYard, I'm going to post this video as soon as we're done. It's going to premiere on the Basketball Passport page at YouTube. Subscribe wherever it is that you get your podcasts, and preferably on Odyssey. They pay our bills. And then we'll keep this thing rolling. But Leigh, you asked for questions on Twitter. Are there a couple in particular that you want to get to?
Well, there's not a ton. I'll say that. One here is asking, this is probably more directed for you, about which players you think the Lakers will trade for this season. We got that. So I don't know if you want to kick off with that, and then didn't do too well on a Sunday afternoon when we were competing with the NFL. I don't think that
fantasy
was
football. We should have told them we'll give you fantasy football advice next time
that's
that
right.
we do a show on a Sunday. No, it works out fine because we're 55 minutes into this thing, and that's plenty of our voices. But for who I think the Lakers are going to trade for. tune into the Lakers Lounge. Like literally right after we're done here on this same channel, I'm going to be answering mailbag questions from my audience there. So on that note, I think that's going to do it for this first episode of Basketball Passport. Leigh, I'll get out of the way though before we get out of here to let you preview some of what we'll be talking about on Thursday when we're live. We will be live on Thursday on the Basketball Passport podcast page on a lot of P's in that one on YouTube. What should fans or listeners be excited to hear about on Thursday?
Yeah, well, I teed it up a little bit off the top of the show. This was the event in Athens that I was talking about that happened last Saturday. Outdoor event in the first Olympic stadium that was used for the Olympics in 1896, but this actual arena was built 300 years BC. So that just tells you how old it is. And it was a four-team event. Panathinaikos from Greece, Maccabi Tel Aviv, Partizan Belgrade, and Anadolu Efes from Turkey came to play. Again, these games didn't actually count for anything. It was EuroLeague launching their season. Look at that. Look at the visual there of the court. So it wasn't, the games didn't mean anything, but it was just a way to sort of celebrate and kick off the 25th year of EuroLeague basketball, which is a fantastic league. And we'll be talking a lot about that this season. And that event there in Athens, I wish I was there. I should have been there for it. Looked so cool. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. As I mentioned off the top, hopefully we have someone who was there to be able to tell us a little bit more, give us some courtside stories from it. But that's where we're going to be going on Thursday, Athens, Greece, and we'll see where we go.
I'm thrilled. I'm really excited about this project, and I'm really excited to talk about basketball outside of the States and try to bring those cultures to a fan base, an NBA fan base here that I think is kind of curious. Like, where are these great players coming from? How is it that these other countries, France in particular, is somehow has a cloning device of 7'7" people who can dribble and shoot? We'll get to the bottom of that mystery as well. So
yeah, well, I'll be at Atlanta Hawks Media Day tomorrow too to speak, hopefully with Zachary Rissacher. Hopefully, I mean, I'm not going to be. It's not like a one-on-one. I'm not going to be in the back, anything teed up. But he'll be there, so I'll get our first look at him and hopefully have some news I can bring to you on Thursday as well, because it will be primarily Basketball Passport, but it's obviously big news. We'll still talk NBA there too.
So until then, the next time that Leigh and I get together here, please hit that subscribe button. Please rate the show, review it, all of those good things. Tell people about it. And Leigh, this is fun. I should have had a glass of wine. We could have on our way out of here.
Hey, that would be very European to have a glass of wine while we're talking about the show.
Have a good one, everybody.